Well, not much to say this morning, being that it's Mother's Day. I thought I would just wish a happy Mother's Day to my children's mother. Again, tangling with the Gestapo here because that, under their laws, would be considered illegal. And I'm sending this message from the digital concentration camp that they have placed me inside. It's amazing what you can get done when you silence your critics, when you silence your opposition, and when you then retreat to silence yourself. Possibly the most dangerous strategy ever, with the most dangerous escalation of technological tools to do this ever. All painted over with a pretty palette to make it all look completely fine, completely acceptable. Like nothing wrong is happening. There is no chimneys, although in my mind they're always there. There is no barbed wire, although in my mind it's always there. There are no trains, except those empty trains going to Yanchep, except in my mind, they're all there. I guess it comes down to every individual in the state to decide whether they want to be that. The thing you need to know is that this message is already out there. So no matter what you do, you will always be looked at as Nazis. It's just what happens now. And as I said, that message is already out there. I didn't have to try and find a pigeon to attach a note to, or I didn't have to stick a note in a wall as I watched people around me disappear, and as I kind of knew inevitably that I was on my way to my doom. I could film and document the whole thing, and I have done. And so, as I said, the message is out there. It will be received. No matter what victory you think you may achieve by doing this strategy as a state, with a majority vote, just like in Nazi Germany. The one difference is that that message is clearly in the hands of the distributors that at any point of their choosing can distribute that message and bring the entire spotlight of the global community onto your doorstep in one moment and expose this. Now, I'm not saying that this is masterminded by my children's mother. I wouldn't be saying Happy Mother's Day to her if that was the case. You'll notice that I'm not saying Happy Mother's Day to anyone else. And that's because that individual is more likely to be responsible or somewhere near responsible for this strategy. If we didn't have this technology I'm using, that if you're watching, you're seeing it on, then yeah, you may have been successful. You are successful, but to what end? You're successful, and you may be going back through the annals of history and going, well, this has been done here, and this has been done here, and this has been done here, so we as victims of all those things, we have right to use that now. You have right, I suppose, if you create your own system of rights that allows that. But that's a big gamble. It means the whole world has to submit and surrender to that backstep in society to allow those things, whilst one of your victims is projecting out exactly what you're doing, and a pretty accessible alternative system. It's just a matter of decision away to switch to that. And I'll break it down to the most simple thing. It's that my phone is in my hand. If you're watching this on a phone, I am in your hand. I am in your hands. I belong to you, don't I? I'm your very own little Shannon in your hand. But I'm not. Neither is the girl in Ukraine that's taking her clothes off for you. Do you understand? Just for a moment, while you're observing someone on a screen, imagine that you're being observed, observing the person on the screen. And then everything will make sense, hopefully. Or you'll take a step back into that little cave. You'll turn on the news to reassure you that you are in fact in the superior position. But what is the news? The news is just a form of distribution. It's an existing form of distribution. It's there. But no one, unless it's for evidence, has a stockpile of the news. That's one voice. One. There is one single voice coming from the news where a bunch of people get together and say what that voice is. And what I'm part of is millions of stored people. And they're not a face of a large entity of people trying to decide what to say. They're a person stored in a digital concentration camp. And when you're doing that, when you make that move to live in a world where everyone is being controlled by one single voice being piped out on a TV, and you take the courageous move to go into this and to store your story, to write your story, knowing that that will expose you to the first front, to the first initial retribution if they decide to go further on to their clear plan. Like, there is only one plan that you would have to do. You are stuck into this plan. You either have to start killing us, which then exposes you to the martyrdom fucking complex where millions of people will gather around and say, why did you kill those people when they were fucking telling everyone the truth? And the clear truth is, if we had this, if in Nazi Germany, if the Jews had phones, perhaps they would have still done the thing. But the horrific nature of the Holocaust would be even more amplified. What will be left with? What haunts us now is piles of spectacles and piles of shoes. You're not going to be remembered for that. And think how strongly that is in the hearts and souls of people all across the world. That feeling, going to those camps, seeing those piles of spectacles, seeing those piles of fucking shoes. You're going to be standing on piles of people, pleading, trapped in little rectangles that can be, at any stage, blown up to a large rectangle. And you're doing all this because a bunch of people hand a script to a TV presenter. And all of this about conspiracy theory, the conspiracy theory, I'd say if a bunch of people get together and hand a script to a person and then they distribute that on one media channel, I'd say that in comparison to millions of people autonomously documenting their subjectance to that mob rule, I'd say you're the conspiracy, or you're apathetic to the conspiracy. It's easier for you to just do what you did as you were a child and watch the news, what you saw your parents doing is right. But then you've got to remember that the news has only been going on since TV. Colour news has only been going on since colour TV. Radio news hasn't even been going on that long. And then before that, which actually wasn't that long ago, this is what was being done. So you're in the bubble. You're in the bubble of concentrated, focused political decision. You're in a single stream of information that provably by its very nature alone is conspiracy. And if I'm saying, well, it's being used against me, then that is provably conspiracy against me and others that are like me, which there are millions that aren't doing this. I'm doing this, putting myself at risk, putting my family at risk, putting my livelihood at risk, my reputation at risk for those people. So what do you call that? And what do you call that if directly I'm addressing the people responsible for continuing this and they're failing to even answer or acknowledge my presence? How exactly would anyone on earth describe that as not being in a concentration camp, not being a political prisoner? Perhaps not in bars, but my options are to leave this whole Walaberland aircraft carrier, which I call it. That's what it is. They built the aircraft carrier where the city used to be, where the CBD used to be, where the urban sprawl used to be. They built a Chinese aircraft carrier. I'm on it, in a cage. The cage is the same as I suppose every Aboriginal person has ever been in. It's fuck around in the cage or go bush. And there's some type of false narrative that this aircraft carrier is treating the Aboriginal people better. Well, I've seen that it is not. Not at all. In fact, it's described new people as Aboriginal, but worse. So I'm in the same conditions as any Aboriginal person, but with all the devilish fucking propaganda about colonisers, despite you residing in the very infrastructure that was built by those colonisers. You have hijacked it. You've hijacked it. You're filming your own little reality TV show and showing it to all the people you were trying to take charge of. And you've strayed away from the very foundation of democracy on Mother's Day. There is only one way out. It's to talk. And any time, anywhere, I will talk to you. Any type of global governance, any type of diplomacy across the world will require you, Roger Cook, to talk to someone. But you're not. You've isolated yourself down, but you're not isolated. You've isolated yourself. You've stolen a portion of the country of Australia, isolated it with the help of one of our enemies in the dark. There's no way that you can get away with this without millions of people dying. I can't for the life of me understand what you think you were doing. Even China, you can't just build. China works in China because it's China. The moment you try and build China here, you've got to realise there's a bunch of Australians here. There's a bunch of English here. There's a bunch of Scottish here. There's a bunch of Irish here. There's a bunch of people that do not want to live in China. It's one thing if you decide to go and fly to China. Everybody knows that China has always been isolationist. They've always, this is how this whole thing started. We broke into China hundreds of years ago. We broke in. We didn't, except for Taiwan, we didn't take a bit of it with a bunch of Chinese people in there instead. It will never work. And even if it does work, you'll never be able to do business with anyone again on any level Because you have those piles of spectacles, you have those piles of shoes, you have the trains, you have the evidence of your persuasion, all stored within this. But far worse, you have a literal digital representation. I've done that much content that more than likely some artificial intelligence can just glean exactly what I'm trying to say. So even if you kill me, the people of the world will build me again, and I will haunt you until your death as a computer program. And this is where it gets weird. How do you know that I'm not already dead? How does anyone know? You don't. Unless I get to stand face to face with my enemy, the person who claims that he's voted in, with the democratic process, with no evidence of that, nothing. You cannot silence your opposition in this paradigm, Mr. Premier. It's the most embarrassing thing to Western Australia since, I don't know, what's an embarrassing thing that West Australians did? Something or other. But the one thing I can guarantee is that little island, if this continues much longer, they're going to get the message up. At least. They're going to be at least able to get the message up to the rest of the states. And then what are we in? Civil war? East versus West? All on nothing, no talking? You think you're going to be able to raise an army to go and kill people when you don't even... Like that, just that seed of knowledge will be in the people you're trying to raise to war. You've broken all levels. There was a perceived state of order that is now gone. If they won't acknowledge that man that's put in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in duress, in prison, what chance do I have to ever have any of my concerns heard by that institution? That's what everyone knows on Mother's Day today. Now, the Chinese have been living somewhere like that for a long time. They accept it more readily because they have never known any different. The idea that you're going to convert a bunch of crazy pirates and Vikings and knights to that servitude is madness. As I said, they'll tear down your telegraph lines and drag them through the fucking streets. And anyone who gets in the way of it will be the enemy. We don't need this. I'm using this as evidence to document your missteps. But don't for a second believe that we need this in order to fucking overthrow you. And unless 2 fucking aircraft carriers, real ones, filled with Chinese people willing to fucking fight on foreign soil and die here to steal a fucking sandpit, unless they're there in the next fucking week, I highly doubt you have any chance in fucking hell of succeeding in anything you're trying to do. I'd like nothing better than to show you the full extent of my physical capabilities and behead you when you least expect it, and drag your fucking bloody dripping head into the fucking Channel 9 news station and throw it on the fucking desk. But we're not there, are we? I'm doing it with metaphor, just like you did against me. Just like your dirty little fucking psychiatry fucking brainwashed brain thought that it was an option to do, despite you imprisoning thousands and thousands and permanently drugging thousands and thousands and thousands of people, including Aboriginal people, with your father's fucking vomiting, rhetoric-filled fucking cult. You think it's acceptable to use the deepest, most darkest fucking psychological manipulation on your own people? But if one of your father's patients did this in order to, I don't know, get out of class or steal a fucking Mars bar, then he's put in prison permanently and drugged for the rest of his life, all leading back to your little treasury of fucking pill-popping paradise, fucking utopia, fucking El Dorado, wherever it may be. Well, you stepped too far, mate. Now you've got the fucking entire fucking Catholic Church. You've got the entire Church of England. You've got a huge portion of the Islamic world. You've got a huge portion of the Hindu world absolutely disgusted in the sorcery that you have made mainstream, in the torture that you have made the norm. I can guarantee that if you surrender, I will not kill you. You will be put somewhere that is exactly the same as what you've done to the people. Which actually isn't that bad. It's not bad. That's the problem. That's how you've gotten away with this. It's not actual torture to the individual. It's torture to the world. It removes them from the conversation. Rather than addressing their demons, perhaps changing, or setting the actual example of what their misdeeds and what their evilness actually leads to, they're pacified slightly. And with enough time, the attention to identify these dangerous individuals, these disruptive individuals, kind of disappears. And they adapt, just like the weeds adapt with the pesticides and the viruses adapt with the antibiotics. The psychopaths, the mentally disturbed people that you are so-called treating, have adapted. And they've adapted themselves to rule your pharmaceutical empire. And that empire now stands on the fragile ice, literally, that is formed on top of it. And if any of these individuals are exposed, that you've protected them, that under your protection, under your treatment, they have been able to circumvent all type of investigation, all type of observation, and cause absolute mayhem, sometimes for decades. I'd say that's a fail. For the psychiatric industry, for the pharmaceutical mental health industry, I'd say that's a fail. I'd say that's actually worse than what we had to begin with. And I'll remind everyone, what used to happen, they used to go to asylums. The asylum has a fucking terrible name when you think about the asylums. They went to the asylums. The asylums. One letter can make all the difference. They used to have asylum so that they were able to live in a place, in a way where their disruption was not bled out into the world. Asylum, so everyone else had asylum from them, and so that they had asylum from people like you. people that would use their disabilities or their impairments against them. People that would modify them and torture them and shift them and drug them into doing their deeds for them. Asylum. The one thing I've called you a Nazi, I've called you all these types of things, it's just because it has that energy behind it. People understand it. But in fact, you're actually far worse. At least Hitler unified his country under a kind of moral thing. If you take the Jew stuff away, if you take that away, which I think was a type of jealousy and also a miscalculation on the actual strength of those people, which he paid the ultimate price for. Do not underestimate the Jews in any fucking field of play. Even a Jewish people that has been almost eradicated by those people. I can guarantee you they've spent the last 80 years preparing for this to re-arise, however it arises again. But at least he tried to build a place. He tried to reunite and re-strengthen a German thing. Too far, probably with the use of the pills that your father has been selling for fucking centuries, or for his whole life, and that you have then increased as well. So what ended the Nazis? The Jews. They shouldn't have gone against the Jews, and they should have laid off the fucking meth a little bit. But at least they were building things. You hold up this win. I don't see that in the streets. I don't see anything like it. I don't see progress. I don't see new buildings and art and all the things that, say, fucking Hitler did. I see a fucking saboteur. Celebrating himself, congratulating himself on the couple of key pieces of infrastructure he believes is necessary to even further enslave the West Australian people, like a movie theatre. There couldn't be a better representation of what I'm saying than a giant movie theatre. But you need to read the room. Everybody has a movie theatre in their own house. And that is the way the world is going. And the only thing I'm trying to do is to make the screen bigger, so that rather than holding me in your hand, you would be staring me eye to eye. And I believe if ever that was an option, which it wasn't because you didn't do it, that this would have all been prevented. I believe that all the individuals in my family and my friends, everything that I initially, at the very beginning, from the very start, 2 weeks before the mandate was even confirmed, I started, and I haven't stopped. Because it was the line that you didn't just step across, you fucking drove every single piece of government infrastructure across. You spent millions, perhaps billions of dollars on it, down this funneled propaganda system. And you provably activated your cohort and the terrified cohort into complete servitude and complete conformity with your ridiculous health strategy. I suppose when you watch your father observe people in fucking padded cells and in rooms through windows, that you don't have an actual example of what a human is actually like. So I guess it's that Freudian fate knocking on your fucking door. But if there's any scrap of factual fucking humanness in you, it would know that it is completely beaten, completely humiliated, completely disgraced, and it has no options but to surrender. And at the end of this ridiculous period in Australia, the one thing I think, and this is for the Aboriginal people, the traditional owners of Australia, of the place that we call Australia, is that perhaps this example, by supposedly one of our own, supposedly a captain, Cook, has betrayed his countrymen, betrayed his thing, and exposed himself. And perhaps from this exposure, we can heal from the necessary conquest now, 400 years ago, in the past, by exposing one of our own, by stringing one, by saying, yes, our system is good, but it is not perfect. We need to constantly keep watch and keep vigil against intruders from all persuasions, from all countries, from all backgrounds, with all names. So isn't it ironic that the largest attempted coup in Australian history comes from an individual with the same name as the person that started the whole fucking thing? And I think if this is the one moment that Australians can get together and say, listen, if we've got one thing going, it's that we will expose our own for corruption. There is no loyalty because that individual carries the name from someone who supposedly started this country, who discovered it, who would, whatever you want to say. I know all those words are triggering to different individuals. But if we can't take down a state premier that has done this level of damage, then I think we lose the privilege of being able to say that we self-govern ourselves, because we do not. And if this region, formerly known as Australia, is no longer in a position of self-governance or transparent government, then I will leave. If my leaving is impeded, then I will declare war. Happy Mother's Day.